Welcome back to the OSM channel. In today's video, I'd like to teach you how to replace the battery on a 2018 through 2021 Hyundai Kona. Now, what are you going to need in order to complete this job? Well, you're going to need a few tools, but the tools are pretty basic. You're going to need a 12mm socket as well as a 10mm socket. The 10mm is for the terminals, and the 12mm is for, there's a clamp that holds down the lower portion of the battery, and I'll show you what that looks like in a little bit. You're also going to need an extension for your 12mm socket. I recommend at least 10-inch, 12-inch even better. Of course, some type of socket wrench. I have this Milwaukee right-hand impact socket wrench, and I'm loving this thing. This thing's fantastic. Be careful not to over torque the fasteners. The final thing I want to cover before we go to the engine bay and start taking the battery out is what battery size should you get to replace the original battery in the car. Now, ideally, when you replace the battery, you want to replace the battery with the same exact thing. If not, you want to upgrade the battery slightly higher cold cranking amps if possible. But here's the trouble with this car. The battery in this car is a little bit unique. It's kind of like a special size, not commonly stocked. So in order to get this battery from like AutoZone or Napa, the prices of these batteries right now are like $250 to $300, which is astronomical. You know, this battery should cost like $100. So I ended up purchasing one through Amazon from a company called Weize, W-E-I-Z-E, whatever the proper pronunciation is. The battery, I think it was around $150, so about half the cost, and this battery does come with a 3-year warranty, so I'm feeling pretty good about this battery. This is an AGM battery, group size 47, 680 cold cranking amps, H5 QTF-60. So after you open up the hood, on the driver's side of the car, in between the airbox and the windshield, you will find the battery. We have our negative terminal and our positive terminal. First thing we're going to do is remove our negative terminal and then our positive terminal. In order to remove these connections, it's going to require that 10mm socket. So this nut right here, we will back this off. Loosen up the positive terminal. Again, first we're going to remove the negative terminal, so we're going to twist and lift. Pull this off to the side so it doesn't make contact with the battery. Do the same thing with the positive terminal. A little twist and lift, and again, this is the nut that you need to loosen up, 10 mil. We'll just push this off to the side for now. With those battery terminals removed, next thing we need to do is to remove the battery holding clamp. So in between the airbox and the battery itself, if you look down in this little cavity right here, you'll see that there is a fastener. That's a 12mm fastener, so get your 12mm socket and loosen that fastener up. And then once you loosen that fastener, you should be able to remove that holding clamp. And I do have a trick for reinstalling this later on. So we'll remove this bracket out of here, along with the bolt. Don't lose the bolt. And that's it. Now we can flip up this handle and we should be able to pull this battery right up and out of here. Just be aware that there is like an insulation shroud around this battery. I don't know, we'll see what it does, but I plan to leave that in place as I lift this up and out. It's kind of stuck on the battery. Just put it back in place. Now before you install your new battery, you should put both of the batteries on the table and just compare them to one another. Ensure that they are the same size. Ensure that the positive terminals are on the same sides of the battery to which they are. Also just verify that it's adequately sized. You know, the old battery was 640 cold cranking amps, the new one's 680. So this is actually a bit of an improvement. So everything looks good here. We're safe to bring this battery over to the car and install it. Before we reinstall this battery, I'm going to zoom in on the battery tray because I want you to pay close attention to this slot down here. On this battery, there are lips on all 4 sides of the battery, but for now I want you to pay attention to this slot. So let me zoom the lens in on this tray. So down in here towards the windshield, there's a little slot. And again, this slot is designed to receive that lip on the battery. So let me zoom you in on the battery. So when installing the battery, terminals towards the rear of the car should go towards the windshield. But again, take a look at the bottom of the battery. There's that lip I was talking about. So that lip needs to be received into that slot. And I'm going to show you my technique in a second here when we drop this in. But let me ensure that that piece of insulation for the battery is in place. Now, if you pull this piece of insulation out of here accidentally, I believe the arrow goes towards the front of the car. It seems to fit in there quite well that way. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna lift up the battery with two hands. It's pretty heavy, 40 pounds. Slowly lower it down. And now, here's the really important part. We need to ensure that the battery catches that slot. So what may happen is when you first drop it down, the battery might be sloped. So what you need to do, you need to pull the battery forward, and then it falls down. And then what I want you to do is push the battery back. Ensure it goes all the way back, and then try and lift up the back. And if the back doesn't lift up, that tells you that you do in fact have that slot properly secured onto the battery, and that's what you want. So we have the battery pushed back all the way. It's caught in that slot. What we need to do now is we need to install the clamp on the front of the battery to really lock this in place and ensure that it doesn't go anywhere. And what we're going to need to do is just simply reinstall this bracket. And if you remember, on all four sides of this battery, there's those plastic protrusions. What this does is it clamps down on that plastic protrusion, thus locking the battery in place. Only trouble is, this is a tight spot down here. It's hard to get a hand in here, so how do you reinstall this bracket? Well, I think the trick is you gotta loosen up the top of the airbox cover. So there are little metallic tabs that you just kind of flip open with the finger and then carefully lift up your airbox, and you can move this out of the way, and this gives you enough room to kind of get a hand down in here and install this bracket. Just be very careful not to get any dust or debris on that air filter, because if you do, it's going to get sucked right into your engine. All right, I have everything lined up. I'm going to close the airbox. Airbox is closed up, so I have that bolt in the hole. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my 12 mil with the extension. I'm going to turn this bolt counterclockwise until I hear a click. There's the click, and now I'm going to rotate clockwise and just ensure that those threads catch. This just helps to ensure that you don't strip anything or cross thread anything. And now with my ratchet, I'm going to gently tighten this bolt up. Give it a quick test. That battery is locked in place. First terminal we should reinstall is the positive terminal, so I'm going to remove the red protective cap off the positive terminal on the battery. I have a terminal cleaning brush, so I'm just going to clean up the positive terminal on the car, just to ensure that there's no corrosion in here. These terminal cleaners are very cheap. There's a male end for cleaning the female terminals, and then if you want to clean the terminals on the battery themselves, see there's a female end with a bunch of kind of wire brushes in there, so you'd stick this on and twist it if this is all corroded, but this is brand new, so no need for that. Little twist, push down. Finally, I'm going to tighten this 10mm terminal bolt, and I'm going to do this by hand. That feels pretty good. You don't want to make these too tight. I always like to grab the terminal and give it a little twist and just ensure it doesn't back off. And if you want to go the extra mile, spray a little bit of terminal protector on your terminals. Good thing to do, help prevent corrosion. And we'll close this up. Let's repeat on the negative terminal. Remove the black protective cap. Push and twist. Tighten up the terminal bolt, 10 mil. Again, not too tight. Give it a test, try and twist it off. It's on there nice and tight. A little bit of terminal protector. And we are finished under the hood. One thing to do now, let's see if she fires up. Fired right up. I'd like to thank you for watching. I'll leave a link for the battery I used in today's video in the description down below, as well as the tools I used. Now, before I die from carbon monoxide poisoning, I'd like to thank you for watching, and as always, I will catch you on the next one.